Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. Election integrity has been a deep source of contention ever since the results of the 2020 election. Conservatives have been concerned about certain states and cities conducting funny business when it comes to requirements for voting. The situation occurring in Fairfax County, Virginia has not gotten much play in the media, but it remains an important issue nonetheless. I have with me Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza, with me to discuss the matter. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you.
Good, so let's get into this. Can you give us a brief overview of the situation happening in Fairfax?
Well, it's not terribly complicated. It is just that the county election officials are not following state law that requires secondary identification in order to get an absentee ballot. I am a Virginia resident in a neighboring county to Fairfax County, for instance, and because I plan to be traveling on election day, I did apply for an absentee ballot, and as part of the application, I had to give the last four digits of my social security number. It's in the state law. There are some parts of election procedure in state law and regulation that are things that election officers might do or might not do, but that's not the case for this secondary identification. They are required to do it and to make sure that only the people who are registered to vote are doing it. For whatever reason, and we don't know, Jeff, what their stated reason is, the authorities in Fairfax County have decided to simply forego the state law requirement that this additional ID check be implemented before giving out absentee ballots.
Okay. And in the article that you wrote about this, you mentioned the
Let me add one point before your question, if I might, Jeff, which is just to remind people that the Virginia gubernatorial election is hotly contested.
Yes.
And so a small number of votes may actually make the difference in the race. So anyway.
Yeah, I know they're running neck and neck. That one's going to be an interesting one to watch. But I wanted to ask you, in your article that you wrote about this, you mentioned the anti-suspension clause. What exactly is that?
I learned about it myself while researching that piece. George Mason is sort of the country's least known founder, I think, and he was a Virginian, and he put that clause in the Virginia Constitution. And it just says that unless the legislature weighs in on something, that a law can't be canceled by the courts, basically, or executives acting on their own, like, for instance, Fairfax County, Virginia election officials, Jeff, who can't on their own cancel the election law that the state legislature has implemented. And that's what the provision says. And it's different that Virginia has it. Most states don't have this kind of provision. And so this court case and this litigation may meet a different end than some of those other challenges precisely because of this provision in the Virginia Constitution. And it's in the Bill of Rights, Section 1. It's right there.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, it's pretty straightforward, and it's amazing to me that they're still violating that so brazenly. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree. When I read about the case, you look at the law and you look at what they're doing and you think, what could be the justifiable reason for this? And I know that kind of dovetails into your next question. So,
you spoke with J. Christian Adams, and he kind of cautioned you against assigning motives.
That's the lawyer, by the way, who's prosecuting the case for the Virginia Institute for Public Policy.
Okay. And I can kind of understand why he's saying that. But when you see something like this, you have to wonder, you have to ask the question, why do you think they're violating this? Like what would be the reason?
Right. Well, there are people who I think without nefarious motives who have the motive that everybody should be able to vote without giving up a social security number, without the idea that they would be committing fraud. And, I think it's always the best move to not attribute fraud. The position of the Virginia Institute for Public Policy, who is prosecuting this case, and Mr. Adams, who's their lawyer, is that the state officials need to follow the election law. It's not to get advantage for one party or another. They're demanding that these people follow the law. And it's almost irrelevant what their reasoning is. I would say to you, Jeff, that when I first read about it, I thought, maybe, is this just some let's get Terry McAuliffe elected kind of bid? Like, this is what we're doing our part to kind of rig things for him. but it's quite plausible that this person who's made the decision doesn't have that nefarious goal. It's hard for me to understand how they can't see how the rest of the country, when looking at their actions in clear violation of state law designed to frustrate attempts to game or make illegal votes, doesn't understand how anybody who's looking at it would then see their efforts as a corrupt attempt to influence an election rather than perhaps an attempt to maximize voter participation or something like that. So it's sort of like, it totally makes sense to see it that way, but also it does make sense to hold out room for the fact that they haven't been motivated this way. But it doesn't matter what their motivations are. The state law requires for election integrity this to be done, and they're not given any wiggle room not to do it. And you know what, Jeff? If you're an old Board of Elections official in Virginia, you think that's violative of the federal constitution or some provision of the state constitution, you hire a lawyer and you go to court to fight it. You don't just go ahead and willy-nilly start doing what you feel like. That's the appropriate remedy.
Great. Well, that makes sense. And this is just yet another issue that concerning election integrity that we're probably going to be fighting out for the next few years. But thank you for shedding some light on this. I'm sure we'll be watching this closely.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, conservative news where truth matters.
Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.